Thank you for joining the OSU Leadership Center for this webinar. And this is the last in our Leadership During COVID complimentary webinar series. We will be announcing some additional webinars as we transition back to our workspaces and helping you with that transition. So watch your email and we'll be sending you information. My name is Beth Flynn, and I will be covering the topic of building resilience today. And as always, Emma Newell is our session moderator. And as you have questions, please leave them in the chat box and Emma will ask them on your behalf at the end of the session. So today, we're going to be talking about building resilience. And as you know, we're really never before have we needed to be so resilient. And because we're living in these unprecedented times. And so I'm going to be sharing some tips and techniques for how we can build resilience, or just to even maybe for some of these you're already doing, and just it will serve as a reminder for you. And so when we talk about resilience, people always ask, what does that mean? And you know, I wish that life came with a roadmap, so I was prepared for all those curves and roadblocks that we encounter along our road and our way in life. And as much as we'd like to avoid those twists and turns that we all experiences, and that goes from everyday challenges. How many of you are having technology issues? I deal with that. I get kicked off of the internet quite a bit. To traumatic events like living through this pandemic. And we've all encountered many changes as a result of the pandemic. So every change affects people differently. And so it brings a unique set of circumstances to each of us, and it invades our thoughts. It can invoke very strong emotions in us, and of course, a lot of uncertainty. Yet through these trials, people generally adapt well over time to life-changing situations, and that's due to resilience. And as you can see on the screen, psychologists define resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity. And that adversity could be family or relationship problems, serious health issues, or workplace or financial stressors. And as much as resilience involves bouncing back from these difficult experiences, it also can be a time of profound personal growth. And as leaders, we need to be resilient. And a resilient leader is somebody who sees failure only as a temporary setback and that they can recover quickly from these setbacks. Resilient leaders maintain a positive attitude and a strong sense of opportunity during any time of turbulence. And when a resilient leader faces ambiguity, they find ways to move forward and they avoid getting stuck. And so we need to develop resilience or hone it, make it stronger, so that we can be successful in our roles. So when we talk about resilience, what's your track record for dealing with adversity? Think back to past experiences and sources of personal strength that helped you through other times you've been dealing with crisis. For example, how do you normally respond to stressful events, or have you in the past? Who did you turn to for support? It's very important to have a support system. How did you overcome the situation? What did you learn that would be helpful in that situation or for the future? In the chat box, feel free to list something that you're proud of that you've done lately that shows your resilience. Personally, I know that whenever I face tough situations, I reflect on what I've overcome in my life. We all face battles, and when we started facing battles, they may have seemed pretty insurmountable, but somehow we're here and we're not just living, we're thriving. Early in my career, a mentor said to me that without any tests, you have no testimony. I've had lots of tests throughout my career and in my personal life, so I have lots of testimony. When it comes to resilience and leadership, well, life in general, it's not about how many times you fall, but how many times you get back up, you dust yourself off, and you keep moving forward. And as I said before, a lot of people find that they grow in some respect whenever they're dealing with a struggle. And I'll tell you that personally, my greatest growth has come through my life's toughest moments. Some of you know that last year I spent over 3 weeks in the hospital. I had a burst appendix. And I really believe that that time in the hospital, having to rely on people for just the basic of everything, really prepared me to deal with this pandemic and sheltering at home, because I had to shelter at home during my recovery. And so I think that all our past experiences move us forward. And if you're wondering how resilient you are, you know, think about this Ed Lester quote that's on the page or on the screen right now. And I know that every time I face a tough day, my track record is 100% of getting through it. And so is yours, because we're all here today. And if you're wondering how resilient you are, you can take an assessment that was created by researchers at Everyday Health, and that was done in partnership with The Ohio State University. And research shows higher levels of resilience are directly related to better outcomes when living through a crisis and improving emotional and physical health. And there is a link to that assessment in your handout, so you can take that at your convenience. And one of the things that I really did like about the assessment is that after you answer each question, they have tips for how you can build your resilience. And so here are what we're going to focus on today as we deal with building resilience. And there are many different theories and ways that you can build resilience. And after doing a lot of reading and research into the topic, I decided to focus on these 5 tips. And, you know, being resilient helps us cope with what life brings us. And if you're not feeling really resilient right now, the nice thing is it's not like it's a personality trait and you either have it or you don't. It's something that we can cultivate and grow. And the first tip of these ideas for building resilience is practicing the pause. And so to be more resilient, when we're in a situation, what we need to do is we need to stop, recognize what the disruption is, and take a minute to think about how you want to respond before you actually do respond. And when we practice that pause, we're giving ourselves a moment to collect our thoughts and our ideas and not have a knee-jerk reaction. And sometimes, especially when I'm under a lot of stress, it's easy for me to have that knee-jerk reaction. And, you know, so many times we have that instant reaction to things that are happening in our lives without stopping to think about the consequences. And, you know, somebody may say something that irritates you, or you read a news story and it causes you anger or anxiety. But when we get into that habit of pausing and putting some space between the event and our reaction, it helps us tap into our wiser selves, or as Jeff King and Brian Raisin mentioned in the past 2 webinars, our emotional intelligence. And one way that we can practice the pause is to have mindfulness and to practice mindfulness. And it's all about just being in the moment and knowing what you're doing while you're doing it. And mindfulness helps us practice that pause. And many times we automatically either go into a fight, a flight, or a freeze mode and drown in our own reactivity. But if we practice that pause, we'll be able to make a better, skillful response. And I know that what I've learned over the years is to try to practice that pause, especially in sending out an email, or after receiving something, or after dealing with a difficult issue. And what I try to do is maybe write the email but not send it, and then go do something else and release that stress, so I can look at it as an observer rather having that emotional attachment to it. And so the next time you're headed into a situation that's going to be filled with emotional chaos, remember to stop and practice that pause. And if we do it in normal situations when we are under a lot of stress, that's going to help a lot, because it's going to help us choose our response rather than just going on autopilot. And I think we're seeing a lot of knee-jerk reactions on social media. And so we've got to remember to practice that pause before responding in a way that may not be the best for us. The next one is to think happy thoughts. And I'm just naturally a positive person, but I can admit there's times that it's very difficult to maintain a positive outlook when things are really stressful. And, you know, we've been living with a lot of uncertainty lately, but having a positive outlook and thinking happy thoughts will help us focus on hope and visualize better times that are coming. And so whenever we are dealing with times of turbulence, we look to leaders who can inspire us and persevere during these tough times and help us see the positive. And so as leaders, we need to be optimistic about what's coming, because people are looking to us for an example of how we're reacting to the situation. And so this kind of reminds me of Napoleon Bonaparte's quote that leaders are dealers in hope. And you know, leaders who know how to generate hope create powerful motivation and through inspiring us and believing that there is going to be a better tomorrow. And they tap into that human longing to believe in and advance something more beautiful than what we're seeing in our current circumstances. But you know, everybody at times deals with negative thoughts. And so what we need to do is not let those thoughts get us down. And sometimes just verbalizing your negative thought will help it lose some of its power. I know as an extrovert, I sometimes have to say things out loud, or it just builds and builds in me. And so if you do give a negative thought, also think of 3 alternative positive thoughts. And when we're leading others, we're told that in our interactions to have that 3-to-1 rule, where for every negative comment or thing that you say to somebody, that you give them 3 positives. I've heard it as much as 5. And we need to do that with ourselves. If we start to have negative thoughts about ourselves, let's focus on 3 to 5 things that are good in our lives, or that we do that help others. And that will help us build our resilience, because having happy thoughts and being an optimistic person can help improve your health. And that can be done because being optimistic reduces that sense of helplessness that tends to set in when people feel out of control. Optimism helps us motivate others, and that we can take that constructive action that we may not normally bother with. And then it also helps us believe that bad situations can improve. And we've all been in bad situations, and they do improve. My niece the other day said, "This too shall pass." And I remind myself a lot of times about that. But optimism motivates us to change bad situations. If we can't, you know, we can change ourselves and how we react to it. And so a lot of times when we can notice things that are getting out of control before they get out of control, we kind of nip it in the bud. And so we can improve those bad situations. And then also, optimism also helps us build friendships and supportive relationships. And having supportive relationships in times of stress, when we're needing to be resilient, can help us be more resilient. And so research shows that having friends and social support reduces our risk for disease. And so that's really good to know, because being optimistic can help you with your immune system. And optimists tend to catch fewer contagious diseases than pessimists do. And people who are habitually pessimistic tend to have lower immune activity. And some of you know, my sister has had stage 4 breast cancer for 20 years, and it's now in her bones and liver, and has been for the past 5 years. And her oncologist has attributed her health to her optimistic outlook on life. And so that just kind of helps keep me in check when I get overwhelmed. The next tip is that we need to be flexible. And okay, I can admit this, and I think a lot of us can. We like to be in control. And right now, and for the past few months, our lives have been quite out of control at times. And we have a choice of how we're going to deal with uncertain times. We can be rattled by it and let it get us down, or we can embrace that this is our reality, and go with and learn to go with the flow. And hint, it's better for your, it helps boost resilience when you can go with the flow. So we need that's why we have this need for flexibility. You know, this virus has presented us with challenges we've never faced before, and a lot of uncertainty. And so we've had to adjust many times to face these new uncertainties. And, you know, we owe it to the people who are, have given their lives due to the disease, and to those who are fighting it every day, that we can learn to go with the flow too and make those necessary changes. And the Center for Creative Leadership has done some research, and they found that one of the most frequently cited success factors for North American managers was the ability to adapt to different situations. And so it's just having that ability to access a range of behaviors, and that enables you to shift and experiment new things as things changes. And one of the things about, if you're inflexible as a leader, you limit the adaptability of others. And so it's very important for us right now to be very flexible and show that adaptability to those who are following us, because it can stop or stifle new initiatives, and it can undermine our projects. But most importantly, it can undermine employee enthusiasm, cooperation, and morale. And so we need to be flexible, so we allow others to be flexible also. Two more points. And want to remind you about kindness. I think right now, more than ever, we need to remember to be kind in all situations and give everybody the benefit of the doubt. We go back to the building or maintaining a positive attitude. I talked about positive intent, and I think that kindness fits in with that positive intent, because kindness is defined as the quality of being friendly, generous, and considerate. While kindness has a connotation of meaning someone is naive or weak, that is not true at all, because a lot of times it takes a lot of courage and strength to be kind. And so it's very important as leaders that we exhibit kindness. And when we think about kind from a leadership perspective, it helps us build relationships with others. People can trust us more. It helps us be more transparent. And so we need to incorporate kindness into our day-to-day approach as we lead others. And, you know, we need to value, part of being a good leader is knowing what's going on with those that we're leading. So doing those check-ins daily or weekly helps us understand where people are coming from. And this kind of reminds me, in addition to the Scott Adams quote that's on the page, Ralph Waldo Emerson, he said what I think is the best kindness quote, and that's, "You cannot do a kindness too soon, for you never know how soon it will be too late." And our last tip that I'm going to be talking about is offering grace. And, you know, to build resilience, we have to remember to offer grace to both ourselves and as well as others. Sometimes it's harder to offer ourselves grace. And grace helps us steady ourselves, our teams, and our families, because it sets our hearts towards the direction of service. And more than ever before we do this, we do need grace. And so you may be asking, what do you mean by grace? And, you know, grace is a concept that's present in all the world's major religions. And it does have a divine meaning. But what I'm talking about today is grace in the secular sense, that is on the human level. And it's all about perspective. It's having a perspective that larger than ourselves. And in a small way, it means our connectedness to others to offer that grace. And so when you think about offering grace to others, it might just be being courteous, being decent to people, having respect, accepting people for where they are, offering goodwill, and being generous. And so it's just about giving up ourselves for the sake of others, doing things for others and we do it without any expectation of anything in return. And I'm not for sure if anybody's heard of this book, but John Baldoni wrote the book, Grace, A Leader's Guide to a Better Us. And it's all about the power of leaders serving others and creating a culture of kindness that impacts others in profound ways. And excellent leaders are known as much for their character as for their results. And so as we talk about grace, G is for generosity. Leaders with grace look at life in the spirit of abundance. There's plenty for all of us to share, and so we can give to others. R is for respect. And respect is, we give respect by looking at others with open minds and an open heart. And it's all rooted in assuming the best in others. A is all about action, and that grace transmute action into a force for good. C is for compassion. Compassion is the willingness to connect with others. It is the willingness to commit to service. And sometimes just being there for people is showing our compassion, that we care for them. And finally, E is for energy. And, you know, as I talked about thinking good thoughts before, having negative thoughts is draining for us. And so when we're tempted to think negatively about others or not give them the benefit of the doubt, grace can help us shift the focus to what people are bringing to the table. What are their strengths and gifts that they're sharing with others? And that's by John Baldoni. And then finally, I do want to, as we start wrapping up our time together, I do want to talk a little bit about gratitude again. If you attended the Maintaining a Positive Attitude webinar, I did talk about this quite a bit, and it's having an attitude of gratitude. But you may be wondering how gratitude makes us more resilient. Well, gratitude fosters adaptive coping mechanisms. By managing positive emotions like satisfaction, happiness, and pleasure, gratitude enhances our emotional resilience and builds our inner strength. And it's very important right now. And William Arthur Ward says that gratitude can transform common days into Thanksgivings, turn routine jobs into joy, and change ordinary opportunities into blessings. And today, I want to really express my gratitude to each and every one of you for actively participating in the Leadership Center's webinars these past 8 weeks. There have been so many times that I have been so encouraged and so excited as I read your comments to one another, offering each other words of encouragement and hope. And for that, I am so grateful to all of you. And before Emma shares your questions, I'm going to share a video with you, and I'm going to need to, it's going to take me a minute because I forgot to share my computer sound. And the author of the book is John Baldoni, B-A-L-D-O-N-I. And the video I'm going to share was created by the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. And this was done on May 20th when first responders around this from Columbus came and showed their gratitude to the frontline employees at the hospital. And so as you're watching this video, think about what you have observed these past 8, 10, 12 weeks and what you're grateful for, and maybe who you need to show your gratitude towards. Send a thank you to somebody who's extended kindness to you or has done something for you. And if you want to share and give a shout out to somebody, feel free to do it in the chat box while we watch this video. And hint, you may want to have Kleenexes ready.
That I sing rests in you. Thankfully, I appreciate you give more than you take. Send love, I'm sending love to you. I hope it rests in you. Thankfully, I appreciate you give more than you take. You press on with all your might, from the sunrise till after light. You are the very heart and the very best of us. The song that I sing. Thanks for everything. Send love, I'm sending love to you. I hope it rests in you. Thankfully, I appreciate you give more than you take. Send love, I'm sending love to you. I hope it rests in you. Thankfully, I appreciate you give more than you take. Send love, I'm sending all I love. Our hope, all of our hope. Thankfully, I appreciate. Send love, I'm sending love to you. I hope it rests in you. Thankfully, I appreciate. We appreciate.
Sorry about that. And I truly appreciate you. Emma, do you have any questions to share?
Sorry about that. Yes,
Okay.
we do have a couple of questions. Are you able to share that video link with us in the chat box? There are some that are requesting to go ahead and share that with their friends and family.
Okay, if it's okay with everybody, I'll send it when we send the video link. I'll also send the YouTube link for this because it's going to take me a while to find it. But it is available on YouTube, and I will send it to you this afternoon when we send out the link to the evaluation and also to this webinar.
Thank you for that, Beth. We also have questions on, can we share this? This video will be made available on our YouTube channel, which you can go ahead and share that way as well, as Beth was mentioning.
Okay, good.
And then Candy had a question. She asked, will you send the names of the books that you mentioned throughout the presentation?
Yes, and the Grace book, John Baldoni, is mentioned in the handout, and he's the one who wrote the book on grace and leadership. And then the Everyday Health website is also in the handout, and they have lots of tips about being resilient as well as with that assessment about how resilient you are. Any other questions?
That is all of our questions now. Thank you so much, Beth, for going ahead and sharing this with us and sharing your knowledge. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you for the final wrap up. If you have further questions, please leave them in the chat box and we can answer them after our final conclusion.
Okay, this concludes our webinar series on COVID-19. And this presentation and the link to the YouTube video that I showed at the end of the webinar will be made available on our YouTube channel. And please follow us for further updates on our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn accounts. And we are continuously, Emma does a very good job with our social media, offering tips and tricks and keeping you up to date on what's going on at the OSU Leadership Center. Have a good day, everybody.